My mom won't talk to me because I didn't say goodbye to her this morning.
Please let me know if I'm wrong or if this lady is just trying to make me crazy. I woke up late this morning for work and had to rush out of the house. My mom was using the bathroom and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. She also has her tendency to chat in the mornings, making me later than I already am. I called her as I walked to my car to apologize for not saying goodbye. She immediately said, "Wow, you really left without saying bye," and hung up on me. I called her back and she ignored my calls. Am I wrong for not saying bye? No?
What the hell? Oh, this feels weird.
Yeah, it does. None of that felt good. I don't think you're crazy. If my mom was pooping, I wouldn't want to go in there to say goodbye. I'll just send her a text. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calbus. My name is Luma. With me today is Zen. And today we're looking at some entitled people. Entitled parents, entitled children, choosing beggars, and everything in between. So let's just get right into it and keep all of our therapists very well employed.
CB of Tesla cars. 2020 Tesla Model 3, 20 grand. Description, please text me on Facebook Messenger your prize. It's clean title, no salvage. It's long range car and dual motors. Battery is in perfect condition. Just got to repair front of the car. If you repair car, you can sell in full price. I'm not
Look, I had to get my car repaired because somebody scraped the paint off the side with their keys. And it was like $3,000 dues for how much extensive damage was done. Now, that was just the paint. This is definitely a $20,000 repair job.
Like, someone's gonna grab it. Like, someone's probably gonna do it. I was gonna say, oh, the dual motors, probably because it's been split in the middle, but Tesla cars have the engine in the back.
My mom is being entitled to my phone conversation. I'm temporarily living with my parents until my fiance comes back to the country. I'm not a big fan of being 27 years old and living with my parents, but I've gotten used to it. It helps me save money until my fiance comes back home in August. My mom is more so rigid, and we don't have the best of relationships. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. I'm slowly becoming Sean Connery.
Yeah, this is a weird slide.
Yeah, I can't get back to that accent now. All I'm gonna hear is Sean Connery. So tonight I was talking to my friend on the phone, and we were having a good time joking around and swearing. I got a text from my mom telling me I sound classless. I was confused by the text, and I ended the call with my friend. I went downstairs and asked her about the text. She told me that she can hear me talking, and that I sound like I have no class. Me, Sean Connery. I asked her why she's listening in on my calls and explained everyone swears. She then said no daughter of hers is to curse and that no one has respect for me. Not gonna lie, I got upset and raised my voice and she started to yell. I was raising my voice louder at this point and she raised the volume up on the TV to tune me out. I ended up going back upstairs, but I stupidly cried over this. But I also feel so confused of why this is an issue if my friend and I are just joking around, but like, why is she listening in on my calls? I know this post sounds stupid, but I just feel so upset over this.
I'm sorry, I did pay attention. It's just Sean Connery in the dentist chair with the cotton in his mouth accent just really threw me for a loop.
Yeah. Trust me, that was not fun for me either. But yeah, no, I remember when I was doing YouTube the first time, my content was pre-adpocalypse, and my language was foul and vile for the most part. And I remember at one point my dad was like, yeah, a coworker of mine was talking about how he won't let his kid watch YouTube anymore because he was listening to some kid who swears too much. And he was just making eye contact with me, and I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You picking up what he's putting down?
I was like, real stories that happen for real? I mean, he was right. I needed to swear less in videos.
We've all gone through that phase. But what gets me about this is I got a text from my mum telling me I sound classless. Shut the hell up. Gross.
Yeah, no, that's the thing that really strikes me is like you're trying to like shame your daughter into swearing less instead of like preaching the reasons why you should swear less. It's just like, you sound like such a stinky Becky. Like, get out of here. Much like how you can get out of here by going to patreon.com/Calbus. Get benefits, vote in polls, special room in the Discord, engagement.
Yep. Engage me more, Lumo! Come have a cuppa with a friend and paint my house. So I'm looking to establish a long-term relationship with a painter. Sounding like a dating ad? I have a large Victorian home that really need paint inside and out. Lots of scars need love. Not insane, but scars nonetheless. Looking for quality work that isn't going to break the bank with every job. Room by room, area by area. A friendship too! I get that exterior and interior don't always play together, so I'm open to multiple friends. Need to submit some bids to Maryland Historical Trust. Nope, just a regular working stiff that needs to invest in the right craftsman/woman. Probably not a check in the immediate future, but maybe in a few months. Grants and such. Any interest? Message me, come over cuppa. What the f...
I love probably not a check in the immediate future. As in,
Like-
I'm not gonna pay you in the immediate now.
It's creative, I'll give you that, but also I just like not gonna pay you grants and such. It's like, what is this?
Well, my thing, who do I think this will appeal to? Because you and I, you know, we both have a little bit of knowledge of demographics. Like, when they're drafting this post, what kind of absolute goddamn idiot do they think is gonna take them up on this? Like, I know some of them actually believe that they're doing a service by this. Most people don't. Like, who do they think they're getting?
No, like, okay, so there is some important context we're missing, which is the name and possible gender. Like, if they're going down this route, it could be a case of someone is genuinely thinking it as like possibly a dating ad. Maybe this is something that could be something. That could be a whole other avenue. They could just grab in some, like, you know, ill intent people. But no, if you're trying to hire someone, this is not the way to go.
I'm sorry, but just the fact that you were like, it could be a dating ad for somebody, I'm just thinking of like Brighton Painters Find and Love Facebook group.
Paint your future. Find love on painters.com.
Onlyacrylics.com for your best sloppy seconds. Those 7.
Don't let your watercolors run.
I casually mentioned something from my childhood to my fiance and was shocked! Basically, when I was younger, I was never allowed to close the room to my door. If I was sat in one room in the house and I moved to another room in the house, I'd have to explain where I was going, and my parents would ask me what I was doing. If I had my door closed, my mom would come into my room on some pretense and then exit and leave the door open. My mom would always sit centrally in the house so she could hear everything going on, and then if I made a noise, would shout up and ask what I was doing. If I was on the phone, my mom would listen in to my calls and either audibly report it back to my dad, or if she was visibly listening, she'd try and shout over me while I was on the phone. An example of it just being if I said something grammatically incorrect, she'd correct my grammar. She also routinely tried to look over my shoulder if I was on my phone, and if I showed her a phone on my phone, she'd then try and look at my messages. Basically, is any of this normal? I thought it was just standard parenting with a bit of OTT for the longest time, but my partner has suggested to me that it's a lot worse. It was so normal during my childhood I didn't interrogate it, but I've spent my adulthood paranoid, anxious, and protective of my privacy and private life as a result. Any thoughts? I've never thought I'd
Get the hell out!
I mean, they did.
No, I mean away from that entirely. Jesus!
At the same time, though, this is a little bit fascinating. Like, in a weird way, they grew up in a, like, what's it called? Panopticon? Yeah.
Yeah,
No, genuinely, like the mother sitting central in the house, constantly correcting, adjusting behaviors of things that she heard were incorrect. Like,
That's so weird.
you grew up in the Panopticon. I'm sure happy that my family is normal.
Now that I'm back from vacation, I'm realizing a big parent fail. Looking for items to put in an Easter basket for an 11-year-old girl. She likes makeup, bracelets, body sprays, lotions, bath wash, of course candies and snacks, etc. Would need items dropped off, TIA. Oh, you want other people to make it for you because you forgot to.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm disgusted by this.
yeah, and you posted this publicly? Gross.
There's a sentence that my friends say to me a lot whenever I'm doing a bit of, this is information you've offered freely. And this is information you've offered freely. And you understand it's bad. You could just go out and rectify this, but you refuse to. You would rather beg than parent.
He got it right in the second sentence. It is a big parent fail. I've just flipped the fail and the parent the other way around.
Most entitled sister ever. This. Okay, I included this one so we could both feel rage in equal measure. My sister is 28 this year and still lives at home, and she's somehow still in undergrad. Some unbelievable demands she's made while completely failing at life. Demanded that my parents pay for a nice apartment so she can move out at their expense. Parents said no, thank God. Gave her a $1,500 monthly allowance. My parents said no, thank God. Researched the most expensive healthcare plan as my parents offered to pay for it. Insisted that only branded water bottles are acceptable for her to drink. Oh, that plastic waste. Eats out because she finds my mom's cooking not good enough for her. Spends all her $13 an hour wage on $3,000 worth of work clothes. Wears only full-priced Lululemon items. Only wears $100+ shoes. Saves nothing from her part-time job despite having zero living expenses. Straight up asked my parents to gift her in their $1.5 million primary residence. Glad my mom laughed it off because she can never afford the tax and upkeep. Tried to get her boyfriend to move in before even asking my parents. He said no anyways. Based boyfriend. Drives around my parents' car like it's hers and then gets mad if anyone else is using it. Now that my parents have taken away her credit card and replaced it with a $200 a month allowance, has the audacity to ask for an extra $200 to $300 for a 3-day vacation in a nearby city with her boyfriend after my dad had already stupidly paid for their hotel with his points, harassing her boyfriend to get a better job so she can live in a $2,000 apartment. The local average is like $1,000. Just can't believe the audacity and ungratefulness. The level of disgusting entitlement made me completely child-free and scared some of my friends into becoming child-free as well.
Yikes. I think what would be best is if they just asked her to move out so she could get a reality check.
I'm advocating for an 84th term abortion.
Oh my God. I was having this. No, actually, this is kind of a heavy subject. This is a heavy subject. I was having this conversation with a couple of people the other day, and I strongly believe that we have grown up through various forms of media and whatnot, of how people feel so more it's like people feel so self-entitled and they believe they are the center of the world, like they're the main character, not of just their life, which is what they're meant to be, but of everyone's life. Main character syndrome. And it's like people are grown up with that and they think they can just get away with everything and there's no consequences for stuff. And we're like a couple of generations down that line of it just kind of distilling. I don't think I agree.
This, to me, reeks of just parents who have failed.
I don't think it's the parents entirely.
Well, here's the thing.
No, because the parents.
No. Let me present a case. Don't just tell me I'm wrong and then continue speaking. Let me present my case, please. My reasoning behind that is it is the parents' responsibility to curate what comes into the house. And you can't do it 100% of the time, but it is your job to instill the morals necessary for your child to succeed in life. I would not be able to be here right now if my parents didn't teach me the value of discipline, money, and hard work. Her parents probably spoiled the hell out of her as a kid. Probably got her everything that she wanted, told her she deserved the world, etc., without stopping to consider the fact that at some point she wouldn't be their little girl anymore. And that day is now. We can blame the media all we want, but it is the parents completely at fault for allowing it to happen.
Okay. No, I agree with that. But I would also suggest that whilst the parents are the forefront of instilling these things, it's also they can't really control outward influences such as people she grew up with, her friends, what happens in school, all this kind of stuff. And even more prevalent these days, what media they consume. And let's be real, depending on which side of YouTube you're on, there's a lot of people flaunting wealth. And some people just take that as like, mind is malleable. And it's just, they will think, yeah, I deserve that as well. So, yeah, I think there's just a lot of failings going on here.
I think we should eliminate all social media. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Anyone giving away a free laptop to spare gaming, if possible, or regular 600 GB or 250 working condition, excellent, good condition ones, if possible? I'd appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you, bless, and you need it for your school.
Incomprehensible. Have a great day.
No comment. I am glad.
But we did share.
Oh dear God, why did you have to include this?
Because it's really funny.
So you, such a choosing beggar, even AI says no. Fan art request! Hi, I'm writing a history thesis on C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, Agatha Christie, and Dorothy Sayers, and the way their works act as a window into British society in the interwar period. I was really hoping to use an image compiling characters from all 4 of their works for the cover art, but AI is completely failing me. I'd love to center Aslan, the Penvisi children, in their royal garb, Gandalf, Smaug, generic dragon will do, hobbits, etc., with Hercule Poirot, a portly Belgian detective with a big mustache, Lord Peter Wimsey, an aristocratic detective with a monocle, and Harriet Vane, a woman about the same height as Peter with dark hair, or any combination of these characters that works. Jeez. I'd love the background of a World War I battlefield or London, basically the same thing, but a generic landscape works too. If anyone could help, I would be so appreciated. If I end up using your work, I will of course give you credit. Yeah, sure! Just a few characters, you know. just a handful.
I saw someone doing emergency comms, thigh up, no shading commissions on Twitter today. 140 per character. No background. You're not asking for charity, you're asking for a Make-A-Wish wish.
I'm just laughing over AI said no.
To all parent customers of Little Angels, please, can you at least restrain your child from not only ripping off the cellophane of a DVD case, but also licking and chewing the disc and the box, therefore making it unsellable? What?
On this day, 5 years ago.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. And that's all the time we have here today on Kelbis. Let us know down below which DVD in the Best Buy you think would be the tastiest. I think John Wick III.
Into the Light has brought some new lore along with it. Lore that plays right into the final shape and the plans of the Witness. Today we'll dive through these lore tabs, dialogue, and activities and explain the backstory of what's going on here. The goal of the Witness, the creation of new reissued banned weapons to defend ourselves, and much more.
As the final shape approaches, and the forces of the Witness surge at the borders of the city, Lord Shaxx has been authorized by the Vanguard to place an arsenal of banned weapons from his personal collection back into circulation. So if the enemies of humanity want war, let's give them war.
In the Hall of Champions, the Guardian ventures to meet Lord Shaxx. Forces of the Witness have begun to invade the city and he needs our help. And so my favorite Guardian arrives, Shaxx intones. Our borders are burning once again thanks to the Witness. Nothing changes, including our need for you. He seems to stare in your eyes, his helmet expressionless, his broken horn silently spiteful. This, he gestures to the armory around you, is my personal vault. It's been refit to serve as the Hall of Champions and your base of operations against the encroaching forces of the Witness. Crow awaits us beyond the shell of the Traveler. We've yet to hear from him, but if he lives, we must be ready to follow him through, and the Witness lies just beyond. In the meantime, you'll push our enemies out of our borders and prepare for full-scale war. Shaxx points to the holographic weapon plinths lining the chamber. I remember how to entice the Guardian's psyche. I've prepared customized firearms and blades for my personal collection, once banned by the Vanguard, now reissued by necessity. Yours, if you earn them, in live fire training against the forces of the Witness. We'll engage in anti-siege warfare against our enemies, in a multi-step regimen to have you master classical weaponry as you defeat our foes, and will make you an even better guardian than you are. He looks you up and down. The witness is doomed. A guardian's greatest advantage is their light, but a top-notch arsenal certainly helps. And to face the witness, you'll need the best, Shaq says, gesturing broadly to the hall. I've assembled the brave arsenal together with Ada 1. Many of the weapons here have been discontinued for being too dangerous, he says, shaking his head. We've revived a dozen of them for your edification, because annihilation is coming for us, and Vanguard's safeguards won't save us, but you might. In the bazaar of the tower, you find Ikora reviewing a holographic map of the last city's defenses, featuring highlighted icons at the sites of your recent victories. She minimizes the map and addresses you. Thank you for working with Shax to break the witness's siege. Every inch of ground we gain now will be invaluable to our civilians once we're through the portal. Make no mistake, these attacks may look like unchecked aggression, but the witness's forces have a strategic goal. They're hoping a pressure campaign will keep our light bearers pinned in the last city and out of the portal. Ikora's eyes narrow, and for a moment her impatience shines through. They're playing for time we can't afford to lose. Keep working to stabilize our defenses. The more you accomplish before Mara and Osiris reopen the portal, the more of our forces will be available for a counterattack. Her tone grows flintly with determination. And then we'll finally show the witness the power of humanity's resolve.
What is a guardian? Are we gods? We are connected to the weft and weave of the universe. No one knows how long we live. We stand alongside those without our gifts. We know, intimately, their lifespans, their mortality, despite their resilience. Mortals live more intensely than any guardian I've known. Love harder, perhaps. They know tomorrow is never guaranteed. That everything they could become dies with them. So, are we protectors? Our gifts were meant to defend against impossible threats. Those who need us have never needed us more. We could do nothing, and they would still die. What is a guardian in that moment? Now, across Last City territory, the forces of the Witness surge. Our borders are under siege. Does that make us soldiers? Pushing back buys us only time, but the alternative is unthinkable. We built a city none of us dared to dream of, with allies from unlikely places. We have never had more to lose. I turn the question to you, on the eve of our darkest hour. What is a guardian? Define us, in this moment, for all time.
Enemies of the city have invaded the Hive and Fallen forces of darkness. The Hive makes sense, they've always been under the Witness's wing, but the Fallen are interesting. I'm not sure if these Fallen were under Aramis, or if they're just random Elixni who've decided to side with the Witness and its cause, but these are the factions that currently attack the city. It might have made a little more sense if the Shadow Legion were here as well, after the events of Lightfall, but regardless, these are our enemies no matter what, Witness or not. Guardians now defend the last city, Vostok Observatory, and the Cosmodrome from these creatures hell-bent on stopping our progress to enter the portal. The Witness is throwing everything at us, pyramids, tormentors, its champions. At the center of this pushback effort in Onslaught is the ADU. The ADU is central to Guardian success in pushing back our foes. If the ADU falls, so does the mission and the enemies overrun. If the Guardians maintain the health of the ADU, it'll allow us to deploy defenses, trip mines around the area, decoys, and even turrets to assist us in our journey. Beginning waves might feel like a breeze, but after a while some of those defenses will be needed in later rounds to keep enemies like tormentors under control. As we fight through and defend these arenas, we'll be teleported into the pyramid ship. Here we take the attack to the Witness's forces. Instead of playing defense all the time, we play offense, take out champions of the Witness, and get some epic loot in the process. Now in reality, we know Bungie had to throw this content together, so there's some obvious questions, but this is the overview. Season of the Wish, Crow entering the portal, and maybe some cutscene was supposed to lead directly into the final shape. This Into the Light content drop wasn't even supposed to exist, but it makes sense on some levels. In moments like these though, and Lightfall and even Witch Queen when the Traveler disappeared from the city for a short time, personally this would be more impactful story-wise to see how this affects the city. Back then the Traveler completely disappeared in Witch Queen. In lore or a cutscene we can learn about what the heck happened. What did the civilians feel about this? Is there power in the city? Is everybody running around like chickens with their heads cut off? In Into the Light, is there any fear that aliens now rush through the streets, or are people just living their normal lives? As pyramids break through the clouds and halt overhead, the Witness is gone for now, but this is still pretty huge, right? The last time something like this happened on a grand scale was the Red Legion.
This enemy has taken our home, taken our light, and now they threaten our very existence.
Shaxx, along with weapon foundries like Weist and 801, have constructed the Brave Arsenal to help us fight. Foundries make your weapons, he explains. Scouts provide you with reconnaissance objectives. Armorers make your clothing. And old buzzards like me train you in the use of your light. In the new Blast Furnace lore tab, we learn more about these weapons and their creation or reissuing thanks to 801. And I'll personally produce a limited number of previously unreleased designs. An alternate version of Blast Furnace, for example, 801 explained. First you strong-arm us into altering our specs, the Vice Rep scoffed. And now you come begging for the very models the Vanguard rejected? They would have turned the Crucible into a graveyard, Shaxx interjected. I don't regret. I think what Lord Shaxx means to say, 801 interrupted, shooting the Titan a razor-sharp glance, is that your prototypes were ahead of the market. Their time to shine is now. Can the soft sell? Replied the Omelan rep. The numbers are right, so we're in. But what's the catch? The Vice rep asked suspiciously. No catch, 801 steepled her fingers. In a year's time, we'll all be dead. The rep shifted uncomfortably. Or we'll have defeated the Witness, she continued. In either case, it's time to diversify our offerings with newly released designs and more. The Vice rep arched her eyebrow. What do you have in mind? Ada's tone warmed slightly. Just an idea. There's an old Cosmodrome program whose revival I think could be quite useful. Throughout the lore of these weapons and dialogue found in the various quests and weapons, other characters are present. Empress Keitel and Saladin speak about leadership in the face of adversity and training iron war beasts. In Elsie's rifle, she and Shaxx speak about strategic points in the city and how to maintain safety, Elsie explaining which parts fell in those alternate futures. And in Forbearance, Mara discusses the implications of light and dark merging. She says it's like the Awoken. She says, and like our people, she concluded, its form will arise from memories of the forgotten, those who witnessed the end and returned as a beginning. So there you have it, Guardians, the story of Into the Light and what's going on with this city invasion. Some of these lore and Grimoire cards have some more fun moments, like mentioning Randall the Vandal and how Amanda's memorial is now at her workspace in the tower. Fun little Easter eggs and references, but I tried to piece together the overall story of what's going on here to get us ready for the final shape. Forces of the Witness stalling the Guardians before we enter the portal. If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore and mysteries just like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. This week in Destiny for April 25th, 2024. How power works in the final shape. Pantheon the Raid Gauntlet starts next week. A new modifier with no abilities arrives in PvP. The Iron Banner final week, Archie plushies, new trailers, and much more. So the first part of This Week in Destiny starts off with some recent trailers. The Journey into the Traveler trailer we broke down a couple of days ago. Cade 6 narrates, the witness cuts him off, and a bunch of new images are seen. After that, they show the Dread enemy faction, the Harbinger and Weaver, the Husk, and the Grim. A big chunk of this week's update is power and how it's going to work in the final shape. Bungie has revisited the power systems and overhauled the UI to make power more intuitive and approachable than ever before. All the changes we're about to discuss were made with the following goals in mind. Power offers a meaningful progression that rewards players the real sense of getting stronger. Destiny 2 is a game you can always play with your friends, regardless of your power level. To lower the barrier to entry for Destiny 2's story content, and power should be intuitive and understandable both for experienced and new players alike. The first news is Fireteam Power. Destiny has always been a game about playing with your friends, and now it's going to be easier than ever, no matter if you play every day or haven't played in years. The player with the highest power level in a fireteam will become the power leader, and all other players in the fireteam will be brought up to 5 power below the power leader, that is if they aren't already higher. Fireteam power only affects activity difficulty.
Level up your gaming space with metal posters from Displays. Hang your display,
and your unadjusted power level will still determine the power of your rewards. Being a power leader will also give you a boost to any commendations earned at the end of the activity. As you can see in the images, your power level will now be displayed next to the activity power cap right by the launch button. When your power is increased by Fireteam power, your adjusted power will take its place. So here Soyuz BNG is the power leader and is boosting Rook BNG to 1995 power, 5 below Soyuz's power of 2000. Removing power limits from legacy gear. One problem Bungie encountered when designing Fireteam power was the limits found on older gear items. You might have noticed that as you read about Fireteam power that the adjusted power shared by the power leader would sidestep the caps on old power limited items, making it possible to ignore them. After some thinking, they came to the decision to remove power limits from all items starting in the final shape. They understand that many old limited power items have been dismantled by this point, and they regret they have no recovery mechanism for those. Going forward, they intend to reintroduce sources for most of these, updated to the modern Destiny sandbox standards with added properties such as origin traits and build crafting perks. Next up, Bungie is improving power bands to further lower the barrier to entry. In the final shape, the soft cap will only require 40 power to reach, down from the usual 150. This change should allow new lights enough time to get familiar with the core of Destiny's gear power system before stepping into the broader game without holding them back. You can also easily achieve the soft cap by playing through either difficulty of the final shape campaign. If you complete it on Legendary, you'll be rewarded with an entire gear set of 1960 power. Plus 20 into the powerful band, giving you a great head start towards being raid ready for contest mode, 1965 power. Here's the resulting power bands for the final shape. The power floor 1900, soft cap 1940, power cap 1990, and the hard cap or pinnacle at 2000. What about activity power? Beginning with the final shape, the power level of activities will become much easier to understand. They're also making it so players can enjoy Destiny 2's story and free roam content at any level. Activities will be divided into 2 categories, power disabled and power enabled. Power disabled activities play the same for everybody no matter their power level. Anyone at any level can jump right in and experience them to the fullest. As such, increasing your power won't change the difficulty you experience, and you can't overlevel the enemies in these activities. Power disabled activities include campaigns, both on normal and legendary, seasonal story missions, free roam destinations, crucible, and some legacy content. Power enabled activities, by comparison, are where you grow stronger by improving your power. These each have an activity power cap, or a power level at which you have achieved maximum effectiveness. Bungie's improved the UI to show you exactly what these activity power caps are and if you've achieved them. Enemies will have a set feel for how tough they are even at a cap, but you will notice yourself getting stronger as your power level grows. Power-enabled activities include Vanguard playlists, Nightfalls, seasonal activities, exotic mission rotators, Trials of Osiris, raids, and dungeons. Every power-enabled activity falls into one of the 5 difficulty tiers or one unique mode. Next up, Artifact Power Bonus. The way you earn bonus power from the seasonal artifact is staying the same at its core, but they've rebalanced it a little bit better to offer more meaningful and rewarding progression given other upcoming changes. With the additional time offered by each episode, they've increased the number of weeks with seasonal challenges, and they will also be receiving a buff to their XP rewards. Given this, Bungie needed to make some adjustments to the XP requirements for artifact bonus power levels. The goals for the rebalance were that actively engaged players could attain similar artifact levels achieved by the end of an episode, and that artifact power remains a rewarding pursuit throughout. This next one's exciting, account-wide power. Many Guardians play Hunter, Titan, and Warlock. Personally myself, I have a Titan and a Warlock, but I main Hunter most of the time. Starting in the final shape though, the gear rewards you earn on any character will drop with a power level relative to the highest power character on your account. So level up the power of your Hunter, and when you switch over to your Titan or Warlock, the gear rewards you earn will be around your Hunter's level. The exact power of rewards will still depend on the source, but the power you earn on one character will positively influence rewards you find on your others. And lastly, reward power. For some time now, select activities such as Ritual Playlist have had a chance of dropping a powerful reward with +1 power for players between the soft cap and the powerful cap. In the final shape, we're extending this beyond those select activities to just about every reward source in Destiny 2. This change will help players gradually reach the power cap no matter what activities they choose to play, so you aren't limited to just the weekly available powerful rewards. Next Tuesday, Guardians will have a chance to face something we have never done before. Pantheon will unfold starting April 30th with 4 of the toughest bosses you've ever faced. The challenge will escalate over the coming weeks until you have to defeat 8 bosses in a row. They say you can read more details on this in the April 11th This Week in Destiny, but even then they didn't give much information. Basically, it's a raid boss gauntlet, there's new challenges, a title for it, and it sounds pretty exciting. There's also a creator challenge going on for launch. Next week, Crucible Labs will feature hardware supremacy, no abilities, and weapons only. The hardware modifier disables all abilities including movement abilities like dodge and Icarus dash, although you can still use your power jump abilities, and puts the focus on gunplay. Collect heavy and special ammo from crates, and don't forget to pick up those crests. As with all labs, they will be paying close attention to how this modifier is received, so please try it and give them your feedback. Attention Guardians, Valus Forge will be back on the tower on April 30th for one final Iron Banner before the final shape arrives. He is on better terms with Lord Shaxx lately. This refers to some of the lore found in the Brave Arsenal weapons. If you're looking for some of the Iron Banner weapons, now is your time, and if you didn't get them last time, good news, they've increased drop rates for players that have not yet acquired them. So Guardians, that's basically it for this week in Destiny. There's some cosplay information involving the Witness, which looks pretty cool, and an Archie plushie if you are interested. Let us know in the comments down below how you feel about these power changes and the new modifier mode in PvP next week. If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore, mysteries, and news like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.
What's
What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with the weekly reset for the 23rd of April 2024, and this takes us into week 3 of the Into the Light update. So firstly, we will be getting some new rewards this week in the form of Brave weapons, but additionally, Bungie have a new patch which is changing the drop rates of some of the Brave arsenal weapons, and improving rewards in the Onslaught game mode. So we'll talk about that and any other patch notes today, and then we'll cover all of the vendors, new weekly quests, key activity rewards, farmable exotics, lost sectors, and the primary loot drops for the week. So plenty to touch on in the video today guys, as always. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. But without further delay, let's get into it. And initially, it's worth saying that this week, the featured Brave weapons which will be unlocking include Forbearance and the Hammerhead. So as we've seen in previous weeks, we'll get a new quest at our site. As always, it's worth picking that up, getting it completed, and unlocking those weapons into the general loot pool. Then we can go ahead and farm with attunement. So that's a positive, and there are some changes to Onslaught this week, which we'll touch on in a moment, but for the Whisper mission, we should be getting the final exotic upgrade for the weapon, and as always, the quest for that will be kicked off at Eris. So let us know if you'll be focusing on either of those this week. Next up though, for today, we have had a hotfix for the game, so in terms of patch notes right here, for raids and dungeons for Warlord's Ruin, they fixed an issue where solo players were unable to complete Warlord's Ruin due to blocked doors at the imprisoned puzzle after the first encounter is completed. Also for King's Fall, they fixed an issue where 2 players could receive the unstable light debuff at the same time during the Golgoroth encounter. In addition to that though, we get the changes for Onslaught, and Bungie say we've adjusted reward drops to ensure a guaranteed weapon drop within a 50 wave run, and an additional bonus weapon drop upon completion of wave 50 in any difficulty. In addition to that though, they fixed an issue where the portal out of the Pyramid Arena would occasionally spawn. Another issue where the activity would end after looking at the default reward chest in wave 50, instead of waiting for all chests to be looted. And then they fixed an issue where players could access unintended locations in the Pyramid Arena, and one where players could duplicate batteries using class abilities, plus a crash caused by environmental objects, and finally, an issue where repeatable Onslaught bounties would take up 2 quest slots and only allow players to abandon one of them. Then for gameplay and investment, they updated the reticle bounce behavior on the Brave Recluse to more closely match the behavior of the original weapon, and in general, they fixed an issue where Gilded Cage was missing spikes on one side of the barrel, another where jumping and interacting with the vendor would not display the vendor screen correctly, and then one where picking up a new light kit would override existing abilities for that subclass in saved loadouts, and finally, an issue where the Vanguard node was locked for new light players after completing the tower tutorial. So that does it for the patch notes today guys, give us your thoughts below, and enjoy farming Onslaught with hopefully a few more weapon drops. Up next though, let's get onto the Eververse inventory for the week right here. As always, don't forget to pick up your free bundle of Bright Dust, but for the Bright Dust stuff featured on the front page for Eververse, we've got the Sparrow Getaway, which is 3,250 Bright Dust, rather curious looking thing right there. On top of that though, we've got the Recluse ornament, Necrosis. I'm not sure why it says I don't own Recluse, because I definitely do, but this is an older Recluse ornament right here available in the store this week. Kind of cool Voiced ornament for 700 Bright Dust. And then we've got the Vitreous Entrance Transmat effect, which is 450 Bright Dust. So I'll have a quick preview of that one right there. Also though, the Gloam Strife available this week for the front page shaders, and this is 300 Bright Dust as always. On top of that though, we do have the Meditator shader on the front page as well. But over to the main Bright Dust section right here, we've got the trap setting exotic emote, so let's have a quick preview of that one right there.
Passt? Deal. Einkreisen, suchen, finden. Mit Circle to Search.
As always, I forget the prices. That one's 3,250 Bright Dust. And then we've got helmets from the future-facing Universal Ornament set this week for 1,200 Bright Dust. There's also the Firebreak Shell Exotic Ghost, which is 2,850 Bright Dust. And then the Synchrotron Advancer, had to carefully read that one, for 2,000 Bright Dust right there, so we'll have a preview of the trail on that. But also there is the Pinballer Exotic Sparrow available here, which is a rather curious looking thing. Kind of reminds me of the arcades on Neomuna ever so slightly. That one is 2,500 Bright Dust. And then the Business End ornament for Sweet Business, which is one from this season, available this week, so that's cool. Maybe something to grab. Actually, quite a plain ornament. Really, but a different color scheme nonetheless. Give us your thoughts about that for 1,250 Bright Dust. Then there is the Secure Projection Ghost Projection here, which is 1,500 Bright Dust. But for the second page of shaders, up first there is Celestial Dome, which is 300 Bright Dust as always, a very silver looking thing. On top of that, the Neopop Wave is available this week, which often comes up in the store, But then there is the Boreal Char available as well, which is quite nice with this armor. And finally, the Growing Guilt from back in Season of the Seraph. Once again, all of these are 300 Bright Dust. But finally, there is the Vex Invasion Effects Transmat effect available right there. That's 450 Bright Dust. And for the same price, we've got the Rasputin Reboot Transmat effect, which is certainly cool. And finally, the Ossified entrance is available this week as well. So give us your thoughts on that Eververse inventory, anything you plan to pick up, and I suppose let's move on. Next up though, let's take a look at Banshee's inventory right here for the moment, and we've got Whispering Slab with Quick Draw and Demolitionist, as well as Cartesian Coordinate with Slideways and Backup Plan, and then True Prophecy has got Overflow Explosive Payload, as well as Disparity right here, which is Eye of the Storm and Kill Clip, and finally Code Duello, which has got Field Prep and Chain Reaction, so maybe some useful stuff for some folks right there, but keep in mind the weapons and roles will change throughout the course of the week. Also, for any folks who are interested in the Archie series of quests that I did suggest would be popping up at some point in the very near future, down here near the annex, near Ada 1, where Archie can normally be found, interestingly, he seems to have actually disappeared and we can investigate the paw prints. So this is something I'm going to look into in just a little bit, but looks like we're probably getting the start of that quest. Some folks told me it wasn't going to happen just yet. I told them it was, and I was correct, I suppose. Let's have a look at Ada 1 right here though. For the armor, we've got the Tangled Web, or a mixture, of different items right here that may be interesting for some folks. But for the shaders, we've got Vitrified Duality available first. This is 10,000 Glimmer. There's also New Pacific Sync, the Worn variant of that. And finally, War Cult Rain available this week as well. Up next though, to mention some other rewards this reset, and for the Nightfall this week, we've got Lake of Shadows, and it'll be dropping the Loaded Question Fusion Rifle. This is the final time that Loaded Question will drop before being removed from the loot pool going into the final shape, so if you happen to want to farm one of those out, this is going to be the final week to get it done. Otherwise though, for rewards, as well as the Whisper mission, Operation Seraph Shield is the featured exotic mission this week, so if you want to pick up Revision 0 or any of the Season of the Seraph legendary stuff, you can farm that inside of the mission. But for the farmable raid and dungeon, firstly, we've got the Last Wish raid featured, so all of the legendary loot pool, but also the 1000 Voices is completely farmable this week. Otherwise though, the Duality dungeon is also featured, and there we can pick up the Heart Shadow, as well as any of the legendary stuff, which again, can be repeat farmed this reset. So good luck if you are hunting down anything there, but finally, we've got the featured Lost Sectors for the week. And as well as the exotics, you can see the primary legendary drops there on the listings as well. And for today, we've got Bunker E15 on Europa, which is dropping exotic arms. April 24th will be Concealed Void, dropping exotic chest pieces. Then we move over to Neomuna with Thrillerdrome on April 25th, which will be dropping exotic helmets. On the 26th of April though, we get Gilded Precept on Neomuna, dropping exotic legs. April 27th will be Scavenger's Den in the EDZ, dropping exotic gauntlets. And then we'll see Skydock on April 28th, dropping chest pieces. And finally, the Quarry on April 29th, which will be dropping exotic helmets. So good luck if you are hunting down any exotics or things like that. And for today guys, that's what we have to round up in the video. What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we get the first Where is Archie quest inside of Destiny 2. So this is a new sort of Into the Light quest. It's very, very simple to get it done this week, and we unlock the Where in the System is Archie triumph, which gives us the blue steel shader that you can see right here. It also awards us with a Ramen token and 10 trophies of bravery, so we can at least pick up another brave weapon. Otherwise though, very simple quest to get done, and we have to start in the annex in the tower, not far from Ada 1. So if you follow the direction on screen, you'll spot the green paw prints, and from there it'll unlock a quest at Ada, and I'll just run the gameplay of how to find all of the locations for the quest this week. So as always, I hope it's useful. Otherwise though, have an awesome day.
I'll be here. The founders of the Black Armory were visionaries.
Read the schematic. Most unusual symbology here.
on up. Take a look.
What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news and updates. And while we have had a lot of information about the final shape, a new trailer recently, and of course all the updates to existing content in the game, today we get a whole bunch more detail about new quests in the final shape, but also the story component, and some additional content, missions, even the story finale that'll be dropping after the first week of final shape. So we get info about that and how it leads into Echoes, the first of the episodes for Destiny 2. So there's some pretty good stuff there, but also teasers for a new character, and we get a better look at a brand new exotic weapon coming in the final shape as well. So we do have some juicy things on that front, as well as some updates regarding content this week. So as always guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today and find it useful. If you do, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. But without further delay, let's get into it. And so first up today, we've got some updates about the game this week. And for folks signing on at the weekly reset yesterday, Bungie actually asked players to input their date of birth, and following that, there was a pop-up that suggested the game was changing our Bungie name. Turns out that that was an error, so Bungie Help said there was a routing issue we had to address, which resulted in players being routed to the wrong environment. But it should all be fixed now, and we're looking at processes to ensure this doesn't happen in the future. So it was simply an error, nothing has been changed as far as we know, and it's essentially a non-issue. Otherwise though, we did get the patch yesterday that changed some of the Onslaught drops, which essentially guarantees a weapon drop within a 50-wave run, and an additional bonus weapon drop upon completion. So hopefully we'll have just a little bit more luck getting those shiny weapons now. However, there was an issue in Onslaught shortly after the patch yesterday, where the portal to the boss room on wave 50 actually wasn't spawning, so players were going all the way to wave 50 and then were unable to complete it, which is pretty frustrating. But Bungie were able to fix that issue server-side, so full wave 50 runs should now be a completable thing, which is certainly positive. Otherwise, of course, we got the first quest for Where is Archie? I did make a full guide on this, but this week's one was in the tower, and you can start it in the annex near Ada 1. But if you want a full guide on it, I'll link the video down below. Some players have been asking in my comment section about the ramen coupon, and basically it has no use, it's just a curious item, I guess. So you can either keep it for nostalgia purposes if you like, or just get rid of it. It's not going to make any difference as far as we know. Up next though, let's talk about the final shape. Of course, we already got a juicy trailer for the expansion a couple of days ago, but following a lot of conversation about the raid release date for final shape, which will be June 7th, the same week that the expansion actually drops, Bungie have chimed in to offer some clarification as to why things are being timed this way, and some content that will be unlocking after the first few days of the final shape. So Katarina from Bungie, one of the developers, did say, "We want to talk about why the final shape's raid is going live shortly after release on June 7th. We know this is a tight turnaround and wanted to share some context on why we made the decision. And so back in August, we said that finishing the campaign would not be the grand finale of the Light and Darkness saga, but that we'd be facing off against the Witness in the raid. And for non-raiders, there'll be an opportunity for everyone to experience the conclusion sometime after the raid. But the final shape expansion is different. The additional content in the Pale Heart post-campaign and unlocking the raid for everyone is important for getting a cohesive and satisfying story experience. So we're looking at raiders to be the tip of the spear, and when raid day arrives, no matter if you choose to go in for contest mode or wait to do normal mode, in order to experience the story linearly as intended, you'll need to have the campaign completed and finish the quest wildcard. And she finally says that the first episode, Echoes, and the beginning of the next journey will start in week 2. So some really key bits of information there. Firstly, on day 1 of the final shape, we're not necessarily going to conclude the story, and Joe Blackburn sort of indicated this as well, with the initial campaign run kind of setting the stage for the finale itself. But inside of the raid, we'll be fighting the Witness, and when the first team gets a completion of that raid, essentially the finale for the campaign will actually unlock, as well as a bunch of new content for the Pale Heart itself. So again, in terms of being ready for that, even if you aren't jumping into the raid itself, finishing the campaign and then completing a quest called Wildcard will essentially get you up to date, and once the raid is completed by the first team, that will open up a finale, and it kind of indicates that we'll actually be able to go into the raid, not dissimilar to the preservation mission that we had back in Witch Queen.
Passt? Deal. Einkreisen, suchen, finden. Mit Circle to Search.
Where there'll be a story conclusion that everyone can experience. So that in itself sounds pretty cool. And the other interesting component, of course, is that the Echoes story will begin on the second week after the final shape drops. So the episode essentially begins at the same time, although Katarina did confirm that we'll get progression on the artifact and season pass from day 1 of the final shape launch. So certain season components will begin immediately, but the new content and the story element for Echoes is going to drop the week after the final shape. So some really good confirmations to have there. And Bungie also confirmed that essentially the order of things will be complete the campaign for Final Shape, complete the wildcard quest, then the raid completion will happen, which is followed by the final mission for the expansion, and beyond that, Echoes will begin. So some good things to know there, and it's obviously informed Bungie's decision to time the raid drop when it is. For some extra context though, here are a few words from Joe Blackburn back at the Final Shape reveal that explain why things have been set up this way.
For this one, we say, hey, we want everyone to go really set up what's happening in the final shape. And then for everyone, right, and we're not going to get into that, right, you should all wait for the raid, right? Like, and we're going to like help make sure everyone is brought along for the end of this journey. I think it takes a lot of our learnings from both really classic experiences like Crota and Oryx and sort of infuses them with what we've been doing with things like Savathun and Callus, and like taking all that lessons and saying, okay, we think we can do this the right way.
That means I have to play the raid to get the full story?
No, there is a piece of the story, right, that is told in the raid. There's a piece that's essential, but it is definitely not going to be a moment where only raiders get to see the end of the Light and Darkness saga.
So there we go, guys. Give us your thoughts about that. Another interesting thing, though, related to Final Shape here, and Destiny Bulletin shared a new ad for the Final Shape where we can hear a mysterious character talking. So check this out.
Take this power, Guardian. Use what is offered to purge the corruption. Be brave in dark places, for we are the light of hope.
Naturally, this is speculation. Could this be a voice for the Traveler? And I guess that seems possible. There are other possibilities as well. But obviously, this is a character that's going to have some influence in the Final Shape story, at least. And so there's a new NPC there. And a final couple of mentions here for the Final Shape, but I hadn't actually noticed this until yesterday by accident. And in some of the press images for the Final Shape, we can actually see one of the new exotic weapons that we've only ever seen concept art for previously. So we can see the Titan holding this trace rifle, and Bungie previously confirmed that they are bringing in a Traveler's Beam trace rifle. So there's going to be a strong thematic tie to the Final Shape and the Pale Heart destination. And again, previously we've only seen concept art for it. We don't know exotic perk names and stuff like that, but this is an in-game render of the weapon, which appears to have sort of a red skin on it, but also it's got this sort of triangular 3D shape, which wasn't really apparent from the original concept art that we saw. So it's a very cool looking weapon nonetheless. I'm certainly excited to see more of it, and as Bungie described, it will fire a beam, which is very similar to the Traveler's Beam that we saw in one of the Lightfall cutscenes. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise though as well, we can see the Warlock right here is actually holding the Kvostov auto rifle. This appears to have a sort of tidied up skin versus the ones we've had previously, whether it was the Rise of Iron version or the white drop that you can get in the new Light campaign. But Bungie had confirmed that Kvostov is returning, so this time, unlike in Lightfall where we kept seeing Kvostov in some of the cutscenes, we are actually getting the weapon. So that's pretty neat, just a quick extra look at a couple of exotic weapons, and give us your thoughts about them down below. For today though guys, that's what we have to speak about in this video, so as always, I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. If you have, a rating below really does help us out, and once again, give us your thoughts in the comment section. But additionally, if you want to be kept up to date with everything related to Destiny 2, get subscribed and turn on the notification bell so I can keep you posted. Otherwise though, I appreciate you tuning in today, and I will catch you guys very soon. What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with more Destiny 2 news. And in this one, Bungie continue to tease and preview elements of the Final Shape expansion. So today we get a new kind of mini enemy trailer, as well as a look at one of the new weapons for Final Shape, and an in-game render for the Witness. There's also a tease for a potential mystery character, and then we're going to talk about new details for the 0 Hour exotic mission, some additional rewards, hidden puzzles, Siva clusters, upgrades, and more. But there are also some extra details about the season finale, secrets, and potential rewards on that front. And so we're going to talk about it all in the video, guys. As always, I hope you find this one today interesting, and if you do, a rating below really does help us out. But without further delay, let's get into it. And initially, Bungie did share a new trailer for some of the dread enemies that we're going to get with the Final Shape, and this one's focused on the Harbinger and the Weaver, so check this out. And so firstly, these guys look pretty scary. The Guardian's getting booped, suspended, stranded, and all that stuff. It looks pretty rough. The enemies themselves are really cool as well, I like the designs, but additionally in the gameplay, we see a fusion rifle, and this is the new destination fusion rifle for the Pale Heart. So we can see it's got some of the Vanguard artwork on the side. I believe it's actually a Cora, but it's a pretty interesting model for a fusion rifle, kind of a mashup between an auto and a fusion. We can see it has solar damage as well. And so another minor look at one of the weapons from the set for the Pale Heart. I did make a separate video breaking down everything that we'd managed to find out from the footage for the Final Shape destination weapons as well, so you can check that out linked below if you want to. But I'd imagine we're going to be getting more of these enemy trailers, considering Bungie only highlighted a couple of them there, so I'm sure more will come very soon. But another interesting element today, and Bungie announced the Cosplay Cosmodrome for 2024, where a bunch of well-known cosplayers are going to come up with character designs for Destiny 2 NPCs. Interestingly though, for folks who want to jump in with a cosplay in, Bungie did provide what appears to be an in-game render for the Witness. So this will be the Witness that we actually see in-game for the Final Shape.
Hey Leute, heute stelle ich euch Opera GX vor. Opera GX ist ein Webbrowser mit sehr vielen
And while most of the cosplayers are going to be playing characters we're already kind of familiar with, as Bungie tease here, it would appear one of them is going to be playing a redacted character, so presumably a new character, or one which will actually be introduced into the game itself during the Final Shape. So it's going to be interesting to see who that will be. Otherwise, no doubt we're going to get plenty more Final Shape news very soon, so keep it locked and loaded here on the channel. Up next though, let's talk a little bit about 0 Hour, which is going to be the next exotic mission coming up. I believe it's May 14th. And as we know, we'll be picking up the Outbreak Perfected. It kicks off with a quest called Asset Protection, and Ada 1 requires our assistance to recreate a renowned weapon. So we'll have to start by visiting Ada in the Annex. And much like we've seen with Whisper and other exotic missions, the first time will simply require an initial run, which will award us with the craftable version of the weapon. But following that, we'll get a series of refined quests to unlock the additional upgrades. Some of them will be dropping week over week, but Outbreak Refined 1 requires us to defeat Fallen in the Cosmodrome to claim inert Siva clusters. And then we'll need to toggle the first pair of switches in the 0 Hour mission on Legend difficulty before finishing the mission and returning to the tower to speak to Ada. And toggling switches is going to be a common theme with these quests. So Outbreak Refined 2 requires us to initially visit the Exodus Garden 2A lost sector in the Cosmodrome, and there we'll need to defeat Fallen to get Siva clusters once again. Then we'll have to head into the mission on Legend difficulty and toggle the second pair of switches before completing it and returning to Ada. And Outbreak Refined 3 requires us to firstly jump into the Devil's Lair strike, where defeating Fallen will once again drop Siva clusters. Then we'll need to toggle the final pair of switches in the 0 Hour mission to get the last of the upgrades. And as we've seen for main traits on Outbreak, via crafting we'll be able to get Outlaw, as well as Rapid Hit, Rewind Rounds, and Headseeker on the weapon. Plus we get barrel and magazine options, as well as the intrinsic stat upgrades. But another component, much like with Whisper of the Worm, is that there'll be the exotic ship, and this is the Vimana Junker. So it's an upgraded version of the original 0 Hour ship. And to get this, we need to complete all 3 vault puzzles in the mission. And so that suggests in the vault room before the final boss that there'll actually be a handful of puzzles this time around, and completing those will grant us the vaulted obstacles triumph as well as the exotic ship itself. But other additional triumphs for the mission include Quarter Hour to complete the exotic mission in under 15 minutes, Nimble to survive Trevor's maze and reach the Cryptarch Vault in the exotic mission without dying. There's one to simply complete it on Legend difficulty, and then to complete 0 Hour without dying, plus there's a solo triumph as well. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll keep you posted if we get any additional details. The final thing I wanted to talk about in the video for today though is the season finale, and via Bungie Leaks on Twitter, Harry shared supposed information about the mission. So naturally, a spoiler alert is always necessary here, but as has been known for a little while, the mission name for the finale will be Closer to the Heart, and they say it seems to take place in the Black Garden, more specifically in the Star-Crossed exotic mission area. But we also know that there'll be a Bungie store reward, we don't know exactly what it is, and they list a potential reward of the Guardian Glam emblem. Now this is a really cool emblem, but this is difficult to verify if it's actually a reward for the finale, as the database lists it as dropping via a special offer, so it's hard to validate that, although we do know that we'll get a new exotic ship from the finale called Unforeseen Consequences. And that's a pretty cool one. Presumably, this finale mission is going to happen in the last couple of weeks of the season, so sometime in the back end of May. But according to this post, objectives include finding the heart, exploring the Black Garden, before defeating the Withdrawn Mind, stopping the Vex from pouring into the Black Garden by taking out their gateways, and finally defeating the Temporal Progeny, a giant Vex who guards the Black Garden. So on that basis, pretty similar to the Black Garden mission in D1, but also the deterministic Chaos quest from Lightfall, so it seems like there'll be a solid dose of nostalgia there as well. For today though guys, that's what we have to speak about in this video, so as always, I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. We'll be getting plenty more news even this week, with it being Thursday. We'll probably get more details in the TWAB later on, so I'll keep you posted there if we get anything interesting. But give us your thoughts in the comment section. Also be sure to get subscribed if you've enjoyed the video and want to see more. Plus a rating below helps us out on the channel. Otherwise though, I very much appreciate all of you tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day. What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news. It's Thursday, so we get This Week at Bungie, which of course is their weekly blog post. And as always, there are a handful of updates to cover in the video today. Official Bungie news channels are linked down below if you want to check any of these things out. One of the first components that Bungie have been posting in the past day or so consist of some sort of mini trailers for the new race of enemies that we're going to see in the final shape. These of course are the Dread, and as well as the need enemies, their new abilities. In the footage, we also get a look at a bunch of the weapons for the Pale Heart destination. So you'll spot some interesting bits in there, and here are the clips we have so far. So those are pretty cool, and I'm sure we can expect to see more of them in the near future. Next up though in the TWID, Bungie provide a whole bunch of really cool wallpapers for the final shape. You can see some of the images on screen, but if you want to grab any of these for PC or mobile, Bungie have links in the TWID, and that's in the description box below. Next up though, very importantly, Bungie talk about how power will work in the final shape, and they say we've revisited the power systems and overhauled the UI to make power more intuitive and approachable. And so firstly, there is Fire Team power, and this means that the player with the highest power level in the fire team will become the power leader, and all of the players in the fire team will be brought up to 5 power below the power leader if their power isn't already higher. And fire team power only affects activity difficulty, and your adjusted power will still determine the power of your rewards. They do say though that being a power leader will also give you a boost to any commendations earned at the end of an activity, so that's cool. And next, power level will be displayed next to the activity power cap right by the launch button, so you can easily determine how difficult the activity will feel. So it shows our power, as well as the current activity's power level. And when power is increased by fire team power, they say your adjusted power will take its place. And that's also displayed on the screen right there as well. So that's a pretty cool system. And we'd heard a little bit about fire team power previously, but that clarifies a couple of elements of it. Next up though, they talk about removing power limits from legacy gear. And they say after thoroughly considering the problem space of increasing things like fire team power, they've come to the decision to remove power limits from all gear starting in the final shape. And they say we want to rally all Guardians, active and new, to fight the Witness, and there's no better way to play Destiny than with your Fire team. But as we pursued this goal, it became apparent that power limits were fundamentally incompatible with Fire team power. They do say we understand that many old power limit items have been dismantled at this point, and we regret that we have no mechanism to recover them. But going forward, they intend to reintroduce sources for most or all of these, updated to modern Destiny 2 sandbox standards with added properties such as origin traits and build crafting perks, similar to what they've done with the Brave Arsenal with Into the Light. So we can expect to see a lot of stuff return, and that will probably happen throughout the episodes as well. So that's really interesting. Give us your thoughts below. They do also say though that they've reworked power bands, and the resulting power bands in the final shape will be that the power floor is 1900, with the soft cap being 1940, the powerful cap being 1990, and the hard or pinnacle cap being 2000. So all the way up to 2000 with the final shape. And they also say that the power level of activities will become easier to understand with final shape as well, and they'll be divided into either power disabled or power enabled. And power disabled activities play the same for everyone, no matter their power level, and anyone at any level can jump right in and experience them to the fullest. As such, increasing your power won't change the difficulty you experience, and you can't overlevel the enemies in these activities. But power-disabled activities include campaigns, both normal and legendary difficulties, seasonal story missions,
Passt? Deal. Einkreisen, suchen, finden. Mit Circle to Search. Hol dir jetzt dein Samsung Galaxy S24 ab einmal 1 € und sicher dir dauerhaft 200 GB extra Datenvolumen. Together we can. Vodafone.
Level up your gaming space with metal posters from Displate. Hang your displates in seconds. Swap them whenever you like. Get official art from your favorite games on a uniquely designed metal canvas and choose from thousands of posters. Join over 3 million collectors now. Your wall upgrade is here. Shop now at displate.com.
free roam destinations, Crucible, and some legacy content. And so some things are being mixed up pretty significantly right here. And they say power-enabled activities, by comparison, are where you grow stronger by improving your power, and these each have an activity power cap or a power level at which you need to have achieved for maximum effectiveness. So they're improving the UI to show us exactly what these activity power caps are, and enemies will have a set feel for how tough they are even at the cap, but you'll notice yourself getting stronger as your power level grows, and power-enabled activities include Vanguard playlists, Nightfalls, seasonal activities, exotic mission rotators, as well as trials, raids, and dungeons. And they say every power-enabled activity falls into one of 5 difficulty tiers or one unique mode. So the standard difficulty tier will have an activity power cap of 1945, and example activities are Vanguard ups, seasonal activities, exotic missions, raids, and dungeons. Then there is Advance, which was previously Hero, and that'll be at power level 1995, and that includes Nightfalls. Then there's Expert, which was previously Legend difficulty, and this will be at power 2005, including Lost Sectors, Nightfalls, seasonal activities, and exotic missions. Then there is Master, which will be at 2010, and that's Nightfalls, Lost Sectors, raids, and dungeons. Grandmaster at 2020 for Nightfalls, and Contest Mode at 1965 for the Day 1 raid. And Bungie say it's worth calling out that gameplay tuning in our existing high difficulty content remains unchanged with these updates, and we're continuing to experiment with new activities that evolve in difficulty throughout the run, such as in Deep Dives, Coil, and Onslaught, and we look forward to continuing to explore ways to make difficult activities engaging and rewarding to conquer. So some very interesting changes to power systems overall right there. Give us your thoughts on what we've had so far, but there is artifact bonus power as well, and they say the way that we earn bonus power from the seasonal artifact is staying the same at its core, but we've rebalanced it to better offer a meaningful and rewarding progression given other upcoming changes. So with the additional time offered by each episode, we're increasing the number of weeks with seasonal challenges, and they'll also be receiving a buff to their XP rewards, but we need to adjust some requirements to the XP for artifact bonus power levels, and the goals for the rebalance were that actively engaged players can attain similar artifact levels achieved achieved by the end of an episode, and that artifact power remains rewarding pursued throughout. But interestingly, Bungie are also introducing account-wide power, and they're lowering the barrier to entry to play multiple classes by introducing this. So in Final Shape, the gear rewards that we earn on any character will drop with the power level relative to the highest power character on your account. So if you level up the power of your hunter, when you switch over to your titan or warlock, the gear rewards that you earn will be around your hunter's level, and the exact power of rewards will still depend on the source, but power earned on one character will positively influence rewards you find on other characters. And I think personally that sounds like a positive move overall. Of course there will be some folks that really enjoy having the full grind on all three characters, but with so many parts sort of moving around, reward system updates and power updates overall, we'll have to see how it plays out, but it might just be the case that this works out pretty well. Give us your thoughts about it. And finally, Bungie say they're making some improvements to the power of rewards. And they say for some time now, select activities such as ritual playlists have had a chance of dropping a powerful reward with +1 power for players between the soft cap and the powerful cap. And in Final Shape, they're extending this beyond those select activities to just about every reward source in Destiny 2, and this will help players gradually reach the power cap no matter what activities they choose to play, so you aren't limited to just the weekly available powerful rewards. And additionally, they're improving the power of rewards purchased from vendors and collections, and all items purchased from vendors will now drop no lower than 3 below your highest possible power, and items reacquired from collections will be 5 below. So I think some interesting mix-ups right there. Of course, the power system has kind of staled out over the past couple of years especially, so I'm definitely open to seeing some changes. Give us your thoughts down below. Perhaps those changes aren't significant in the way that some players would expect, but I think in this instance a change is better than no change, so give us your thoughts down below. Otherwise, in the tweet, Bungie point out that Pantheon will start next week on April 30th with 4 of the toughest bosses we've ever faced, and the challenge will escalate over the coming weeks until you have to defeat 8 bosses in a row. And they've already spoken about this a little bit, but that kicks off on Tuesday. Let us know if you're looking forward to it. And finally, they also say welcome to hardware. And next week, Crucible Labs will feature hardware supremacy, and the hardware modifier disables all abilities, including movement abilities like dodge and Icarus dash, although players can still use powered jump abilities. And it puts the focus on gunplay, collecting heavy and special ammo from crates, as well as crests of course, as Bungie pay close attention to how this modifier is received. So let us know if that's one you're interested for as well. But for today, guys, that's what we have to speak about. So
metallurgy plays a crucial part regarding swords and how well they perform, so let's go through some of the basics. When you want to use metal to make a sword, you of course need to get it out of the raw ore, which we mine from the earth. To make it usable, it needs to be melted down or made malleable enough to clump together that you can then shape into the sword. As that metal starts to cool down from being heated up, it solidifies in pockets of crystals that grow outwards from a central point. As these crystals grow outwards and touch the border lines of the other crystals, it forms what is called a grain. And it's this crystalline grain structure that metals have that affect their strength in a large way, on top of just how strong the raw element is to begin with. Bronze is considered a softer metal, but after they were formed into weapons, swords, they could be work hardened in their cold state, compressing those grain structures, actually making them a bit stronger. That doesn't mean work hardening any metal makes it universally stronger, but for bronze, it did work out, and they would work harden the edge, making the edges stronger as a result. You also get similar benefits when work hardening iron, because iron is also a softer type of metal. In fact, a work hardened iron sword has similar strength properties to a work hardened bronze sword. The thing is though, as soon as you heat up the metal to a certain point, where those atoms actually adopt a different phase with how they're sitting with one another, the grain structure that comes into the metal from cooling down gets completely removed. And when the metal cools down again, new grain structures appear as the crystals form once again. So even if you're forging a blade, compressing it down, hammering it, making those grain structures much smaller, as soon as you heat it up again, you can reset it. This is a process called recrystallization, or in forging, normalization. And oftentimes, metalsmiths, swordsmiths, will reheat the blade and let it cool down in several cycles because it normalizes the grain structure, resetting it completely. So then, why did we switch from bronze to iron if they're actually comparable in their overall toughness and strength? It's to do with the prevalence of those resources. Iron is vastly more plentiful in Earth's crust than either copper or tin, but the problem with iron, it takes a much higher temperature to become malleable to either stick together or melt. So people more often used bronze in tools and weapons, not because it was more prevalent, they lacked the technology to work with iron. But once the technology became developed, iron being far more plentiful was a much better resource to make tools and weapons out of. There's also an added benefit when it comes to iron. As soon as you start smelting iron, because you often use a carbon-based fuel source, you invariably start to make byproducts of steel, which is much stronger. Steel, being an alloy of iron with carbon diffused in it, basically gives the iron atoms less room to move around. Kind of like if you had a room full of people and then you filled it up with bowling balls as well, filling up all those gaps, making it even harder for people to move around. It's kind of how it works with adding carbon to iron. In fact, people were accidentally making steel as early as 3000 BC, and they recognized it as being superior because some of the earliest steel artifacts we find are in jewelry, not tools or weapons. And humans usually devote the precious rare material to make jewelry out of, hence why they were making steel jewelry. But they also realized it was much stronger, and so making tools and weapons was a very clear and direct result. Going on to the microscopic level of how the carbon plays into the iron is important to understand the different types of steels that you can make in the modern day. The percentage of carbon plays a very important role, but the three types of crystalline structures that first appears when you're adding carbon to iron is ferrite, which is just basically raw iron, cementite, which is a combination of iron and carbon but with a very high percentage of carbon content, and it manifests in the ferrite as thin lines. And then you have a mixture of cementite and ferrite in these lines, which is a structure that is called pearlite. Pearlite is cementite and ferrite together. And then depending on the percentage of pearlite, which is a reflection of the overall carbon content, will also reflect if the overall steel is either high carbon or low carbon. Low carbon is mostly ferrite with pockets of pearlite structures. High carbon is low ferrite with mostly pearlite structures to having all pearlite structure. It's a very interesting give and take. The ferrite doesn't just have room for all this carbon being put in. In fact, it creates stresses, and the ferrite is trying to push out the carbon from its spaces. Basically, the rest of the ferrite forcing carbon into these localized higher density pockets, which is still a mixture between iron and carbon, just forced into a higher percentage where we see these lines of cementite and then lines of clean ferrite. The thing is though, it needs a bit of time to force the carbon into these more dense pockets of cementite lines, resulting in the overall pearlite structure in different percentages. And remember, this is happening as those crystals are forming as the metal cools, creating this crystalline grain structure. If you can speed up this cooling process, you can rob the ferrite of enough time to force out the carbon into these more dense pockets of cementite structures. Because the thing is, when the metal is heated up to a certain phase and it doesn't have these crystal structures, the carbon is actually diffused more evenly because the atoms seem to have a bit more malleability and it's easier for the carbon to be diffused. It's only when the crystals start to form does it want to force out the carbon in its locations and we get these structures forming. So if you can speed up that cooling down process to give less time for the carbon to be forced into the cementite structure, you can actually trap the carbon into a more uniform dispersion in the ferrite, and it results in a new crystal grain structure called martensite. Martensite, as you see, has a much more chaotic, less uniform and smaller grain structure where all these grains are intersecting each other, which actually creates a much stronger structure than your regular pearlite one. In fact, it can be so strong it can become brittle if you cool it down too much. The amazing thing is if you actually release some of that stress by reheating up the metal to a small amount, making the metal have a type of orange tinge. We're not red hot, glowing white or yellow, but usually just an orange heat on the blade will release those stresses in the martensite structure, and that creates a spring. There is such an intriguing, complex interplay between these steel structures, not just in how it can work in a regular blade, but also you can make a blade to have different carbon contents by utilizing different grades of steel and then cooling it down at different rates, having it adopt different grain structures as well, which is what we see in the katana as well as many European blades like the ones coming out of Toledo. There are pros and cons to those methods, as well as adding other elements to iron on top of just carbon. Adding a little bit of silicon can also increase that flexibility, and that's where we come to much more sophisticated and complex modern types of steels. But that is a subject for another video. This was just a quick crash course on the importance of metallurgy in swords. This was a dedicated video filmed exclusively to the Shadlands YouTube channel. If you'd like to see more informative and entertaining sword-related content that cuts to the chase and is straight to the point, please subscribe so you don't miss out on the exclusive content, as well as the supercuts and clips from the longer form Shadiversity sword-related content. If you'd like to see the longer form deep dive sword-related content, be sure to check out Shadiversity. Thanks.
Wie willst du in der Natur überleben, ohne diese militärische Smartwatch? Dieses leistungsstarke Gerät ist bereit für jedes Outdoor.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I've asserted many times that the best quality medieval sword steel was spring steel. Specifically, that you can do this with it, alright? And there's been a number of people who have challenged me on that assertion, and I have responded to them with points of evidence that we see in artwork of people quite literally doing this in the artwork, okay? Pretty direct, clear evidence that the swords depicted in that artwork were spring steel, though I have had one person, a more prominent person who makes sword-related content, actually tried to challenge even the artwork to say, what if they were purposefully bending the sword for some type of sword technique, which I find to be honestly a ridiculous assertion, because it doesn't appear in any type of fight, treatise, fighting manual, and I can't think of any reason why you'd ever want to do that purposely to your sword. No, you wouldn't want to damage your sword for a sword technique like that. But people have challenged me on that. And then I've come back to them to point out that spring steel was used quite widely in the later medieval period for crossbow bows. You know the limbs on crossbows? Yeah, we have them in art, surviving examples. The surviving examples come from the Renaissance, but we have ones that date to the late medieval period in artwork showing pretty clear steel limbs on crossbows, and you can only make those out of spring steel. And then people have challenged me on that again to say that's more of an anomaly because it's not bending too much and it's really thick, but you wouldn't really get away with that in a sword blade. And these sword blades that we have here where you can do this is a more modern kind of phenomenon. And when we look at museum examples, they are not spring swords. Well, recently a video was released where something was shown that I was very excited to see because I've never actually seen this before. So Adam Savage from Mythbusters fame has a YouTube channel called Tested, and Adam is a bit of a man after my own heart. He has a great deep love and appreciation for medieval stuff, especially, more specifically, swords and armor. And he's had the privilege to go to museum collections and handle historical swords. And recently he made a video where he was looking at, a sword that not only do I find very interesting, we actually have a sword that is based off of that very one in the museum. This is the Baylor Arms Oakshot Type 18C sword. Another name for this sword is an Alexandrian sword. It's not because they were made in Alexandria. It's that the museum piece that this sword is based off, and this isn't a perfect replica of that museum piece, by the way, but they were, a number of these swords were donated to kind of the barracks that it was in Alexandria, and there they stayed preserved pretty well. And what's really interesting, you have an inscription that also gives us a date of when they were given as gifts. And so these are European swords given to Alexandria, and the date is like 1410. So this is really early 15th century. And a good chance that, actually it might have been a bit later, was it 1415, something like that, but really early 15th century, with the possibility that these swords actually were made in, well, depending how old they were at the time. What that establishes is that swords like this, obviously, you can put a bit of room before and after the point where we can really define where this sword appears. So that means swords like this very likely were around in the late 14th century. It's really significant because the museum curator does something with this Alexandrian sword. He grabs the sword and does this with the museum piece. It's a 500-year-old sword. And they're that confident to show it has a spring temper on the sword, and like I'll show you the footage there, springing it. And not only I was surprised that they would do that, but they were confident enough in the quality of the sword and how well it survives to show the spring temper on the sword. And then Adam, when he grabs it, he also does it as well. And then the curator says that there are multiple swords that have spring temper on them. Some so much so that when you just hold them out like this, they actually flex down because of the weight of the sword itself. And so hopefully we can, if anyone is questioning my assertions that absolutely there were many late medieval swords, not all of them, okay, in the actual fact, the majority, I would still say, was not spring steel. But to say it was only like a couple, one or two, or just they weren't really round or the quality was different, that you couldn't do this on them, is wrong. No. It's actually a larger number of spring steel swords than many people have tried to, I guess, contradict me on in the medieval period, because it wasn't just the Alexandrian sword. There are other surviving swords that have the spring temper still on the sword. This is remarkable for a number of reasons, because it goes into, I guess, a caution I would give people when they try and say barely any at all was spring steel. A lot of medieval swords are not in good condition in the museums, okay? Actual period pieces, you see quite a lot of rust and damage to them, and varying degrees of damage. Now, we can get certain amounts of information from these more damaged, rusted swords, but to assume that it's going to have the exact same quenching and tempering state that it had right after manufacturing is not something that I would advise people assert with great confidence, because when you have a sword that is aged and worn over a very long period of time, we're looking at 500 years. We don't know what type of abuse that sword has gone through over that entire period. And when it comes to severe rust and damage, do you think the temper is going to be in perfect, like remained intact perfectly on the blade throughout that period? I would say what's more likely, no. The temper can get ruined on a sword. Now, usually you have to, the sword has to get reheated up to ruin the temper, heated up too much or any other things. But when it comes to severe damage like rust and corrosion that was really penetrating deep into the blade, yeah, absolutely that'll ruin the temper on a sword. Now, I'm not saying that means all, these rusted kind of like damaged swords had a spring temper. I still believe that most medieval swords probably would not spring steel, but a good number of the highest quality ones absolutely were. We have proof in art, multiple sources from swords as well as, of course, crossbows. And now surviving examples where we have been shown the actual spring temper.
Thanks for visiting the Shadlands, the place to find quick and easy to watch sword-related content. This video was a supercut or clip from a larger Shadiversity video. If you'd like to see the full-length video, please click on the provided links, and I hope to see you in the future.
Guys, I am conflicted about this sword and I need your help. This is the S05L katana from Taitsuki, and it is a high-end sword. In actual fact, probably one of the nicest swords I've ever been sent. It was sent to us for review, and here is the conflict, okay? This katana has been made in a very traditional way. Specifically, it has a hardened edge, medium carbon sides, soft carbon core and back. And you can even see it on the blade itself. If we come in close, not only will you see the hammer line, but I wonder if you can actually see the dividing line, it's more visible on this side, of where the different grade of steel ends on the side and transfers to the higher carbon edge. Do you see that? So this is a very traditionally made katana. More specifically, the grades of steel, okay, match the carbon grades in a traditional katana. It didn't need to be folded because the steel most likely was smelted in a modern method, and therefore no impurities need to be folded or anything like that. And so in that sense, it's probably still a little higher quality than many traditional katana, but the traditional way it's made with the different carbon grades of steel is very important and means probably is one of the most authentic katanas we have here at Shadiversity. Now, this katana here that we've tested in the past was also made out of different grades of steel, higher carbon on the edge, but the core and sides are also actually a type of high carbon steel, but it is layered, all right? And we've tested that and we're a bit disappointed with its performance. The katana underneath here has a layering of steel kind of on the jacket. Still not fully traditional, but one of our higher end katanas. We've also tested it thoroughly, valued around 1,000, this one 2,000. This Taitsuki katana is valued around 3,000, and the quality actually reflects that. This katana is a work of art, and I'm going to go into the details of that in the full review. And this is where I'm conflicted, because A sword should absolutely be, reviewed based on its quality, how well the fit and finish is and things like that, but that is also sometimes anachronistic to many historical examples, where modern day fit and finish standards are even higher than what they're able to achieve historically, because we have things like machine, tools that can be automated and get exact, and I mean exact results. And the higher valued katanas are not only, made with more precision and the fit and finish is nice, but they're usually also made with more traditional blades. As a result, these more traditionally made blades are usually weaker than the modern types of katanas that you can buy that are much, much cheaper. This $200 katana, and actually it might even be cheaper on some websites. We have an affiliate link for it, link in the description. It's made by Romance of Men. It's their spring steel katana, and it has performed better than both of these high-end katanas here. It's modern spring steel. What do you expect? But to be that tough at the price point it comes in is genuinely really impressive. And here is the dilemma. Is it then fair to hold more traditional katanas that are made to reflect a historical, artistic kind of expression? Is it fair to hold these types of swords to the same quality standards or durability standards as katanas that are made out of modern spring steel? Is it even fair to do full durability testing on a piece that's specifically made to be a work of art, to represent the historical methods that traditional katana were made in, which is what this piece is? And I don't know. I want you guys to let me know what you think the answer is in the comments below. It's a little difficult. What I think I'm going to do is, of course, do a full review. We're definitely going to be cutting with it, don't worry. And we're going to be reviewing how well it kind of holds up in terms of the hilt construction, how solid and tight that is, and everything like that. Some durability testing, because it should hold up to a certain level of abuse, right? It's a sword, and a good sword should be able to withstand stuff. But there is an opportunity that exists with this sword. And, it's going to hurt me if I choose. This part, I guess I'm not fully decided on. I'm on the fence. I'm going back and forward. This sword gives us an even greater opportunity to do a durability test, an even destruction test on one of the most traditional, authentic katanas we've ever received, okay? It specifically got the differential hardening to have a very high Rockwell hardness edge. They provided a document of authentication and details showing the different carbon grades of steel, and the edge is a 60 HRC Rockwell hardness C scale. It's very high hardness. Our experience with edges like this is that they usually chip more often than not. But it'll be really interesting to find out how likely it is to chip with a sword that has softer steel core and medium steel edges made in that traditional way. That's the opportunity. We could really see how tough one of the most traditional katanas that we've ever received, how tough they really are. But it's destroying a work of art. That's like spitting on the Mona Lisa, and I like this is genuinely a beautiful sword, right? What do you think we should do? I know you guys, you just destroy it, Shad. What if you had to do it? What if you had this sword? Sucks, man. I still might do it, but at the very least, let me know what you think about the dilemma of review, okay? Is it fair to hold traditional katanas up to the same standard of durability when they're specifically made intentionally in a method that results in a weaker, less durable sword, okay? That's intentional, and it's intentional to add more value to the sword. And so in review, that should actually mean it's better because it's made in that traditional way. People kind of regarded it that, right? But then it doesn't perform as well in its the actual use. This sword is meant to be a weapon. How good does it perform as a weapon, you know? All right, thanks guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for visiting the Shadlands, the place to find quick and easy
Hey everyone, Bife here. Before the video starts, this is a quick spoiler warning for those of you who are not yet in the place where they've watched the trailer. there are some things in here that you might well consider spoilers for the narrative of the final shape, and if you want to go in unspoiled, this is another point at which I'm going to give you that moment where you can jump off the train. Anyway, the video is going to continue as normal, spoiler warning is over, have fun. Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, a new trailer for the final shape was leaked last night, and Bungie decided to release the whole damn thing as is anyway on their public channels, so I don't consider this to be a leak in the sense that I wouldn't cover it. If Bungie has said that they are releasing it on their main things, well, heck, I'm gonna go ahead and cover it. So let's break this down and take a look at this trailer. I'm gonna pause in each of these different scenes and point out things that might be interesting or relevant, stuff that would generally warrant your attention. But first, a word from friends of the channel and sponsors of today's content, Advanced GG. You'll probably know them well by this point, especially if you're in the Destiny community, but there are some things you might not have heard about them. First of all, they're the only gaming supplement that's clinically proven to enhance your gaming performance. And as if that wasn't enough, it's a cut above its other competition in the market, with a formula that's not just got a great taste, but also has none of the chalkiness that some of the other supplements tend to have. It's also derived from a completely natural green tea caffeine for a consistent 4 to 5 hours of energy without crashes at the end. It's so good that I even used it back in my Crota Day 1 clear, so I'll be using it again when it comes to the final shape raid. The team is always reformulating flavors to improve them or come up with entirely new tastes. Even if you're not into any of the flavors right now, you can still grab some great merch of mine with Advanced GG. I know that a lot of you absolutely adored the ice shakers and desk mats that we were for sponsoring this video. Anyway, back to the lore. So, let's take a look at this very first scene here. This first scene has plant life growing out of what looks to be prismatic energy, given the color. This implies perhaps that this growth is arriving with the Guardian, or perhaps it's arriving as we attain transcendence. Maybe this means that in order to progress, there are certain areas where we must be transcendent in order for different parts of the environment to be highlighted. It's also hard to tell, but this structure of the foliage at the very center almost looks like a statue of someone. Don't know if that's the case, but it feels odd for it to be the first thing that is pointed out in the trailer.
When I woke up in this place, I could have almost believed it was paradise.
So right here we have a tree of silver wings, one that we've seen before in some previous promotional art and promotional trailers for the final shape, but we get a much better, clearer look at it here, and we get a look at what's going on with it. There is a creature twisted within its branches, and it's very clearly a hive, or perhaps a krill. We'd need to look at the other sides of this tree to understand if there are other creatures twisted in its branches, and maybe if there is some significance to that. Perhaps this represents each of the creatures that have been blessed with the light of the traveler as a force that they can wield through ghosts, which would mean that the other three sides show humans, exos, and awoken. Maybe that is the case, maybe not. Maybe there is something more to the reason why the hive are represented on here. Either way, the tree is growing out of a...
The little things that mean an awful lot.
Level up your gaming space with metal posters from Displates. Hang your Displates in seconds.
Similar cradle to the one we find on Io, which I think is also worth taking a look at because that is an area that we've only had a limited amount of time to explore, and it has a great degree of relevance to the light. Additionally, of course, there is the growing corruption here, and that is potentially something of significance. It could be representative of the machinations of the Witness, or something much deeper.
I feel the light flowing through me. It's everywhere. The ground beneath my feet is a memory.
These caverns are very much reminiscent of the European Dead Zone, but they particularly remind me of the caverns where we found Hawkmoon. This carries some significance for us and Crow. Remember that Crow has gotten here into the Pale Heart before us, so if the Pale Heart is being somewhat shaped by him, then, well, this might be a result of his presence. In addition, near this place, we discovered a shard of the Traveler back on Earth, so potentially there is something of great relevance here as well. Maybe it is mirroring the memory of Crow. Maybe not.
So is the grass.
The great mechanism that the Guardians are running through here was the mechanism found in the northern section of the tower, which was destroyed in the onset of the Red War. But this used to be at the heart of the Speaker's chamber, and was used for, well, actually, we don't know what it was used for. It's also not the first time we've seen these flowers in the trailer, but I think it's worth pointing out now because they're just everywhere. I know, it seems odd to point out individual flowers, but hear me out. I think these are asphodelia. I'd need to confirm it, but here's a further question. Why the hell does that matter? They're damn flowers. Well, actually it matters a lot, and that's because these flowers came from the Black Garden originally, but they were also found on precursor ships in their terraforming manifests. So maybe there is a tangible connection between the Pale Heart of the Traveler, the Black Garden, and the Precursor Society. I don't know what's going on, but somehow asphodelia has landed in all three. Maybe that's as a result of us entering, as we saw in the very first frame. Foliage did just sort of appear out of nowhere, but if these have been here the whole time, it raises remarkable questions about who has been in here before us, or whether there was anyone capable of accessing this place prior.
And the sky. Warmth of the sun on my face. And around every corner, every familiar hallway.
The statues, sliced and halved here, seem to have incredibly large foreheads, which makes me wonder if these are actually representations of the Lubraeans trapped in a form of statue-like stasis. It's hard to tell from these angles, but it might be a little bit easier if you take a look at the subjugators. And it's also worth remembering that Rulk is covered in ornamentation, so he might be just a little bit taller. That being said, they might be similar, but we'd need to look at the structure of their hands and the structure of their legs in order to get a better idea. And that's predominantly because if these are representative, as we've seen with other statue work that has been created by the Witness, they tend to be, practically speaking, perfect in terms of proportions. They don't have extra fingers or missing limbs unless it is a deliberate slice down the middle. So we'd need to get a closer look, but if this is some indication of what's going on here, then maybe this is a nod to the fate of Lubrae.
I keep expecting to see you. But instead, corruption, a blight, sickness spreading through the Traveler.
Here we see something really, really fascinating. If you look at the body entombed within this glass, you'll see that it's most definitely not human given the size of the Guardians that are approaching it, but it's actually something even more terrifying. It's long and quadrupedal, it's a creature for sure, and I believe that it has an uncanny similarity to an Ahamkara. You can even make out the tentacles near its mouth on the left-hand side, and it shows that it might actually even have the iconic faceplates, albeit them splayed out. But there are so many questions this raises, and it's actually one of my major questions walking away from this trailer, which is, how did this get here? Was this as a result of us? Was it something the Witness found inside? Was it as a result of the Witness traveling in and changing the Traveler? Could the Witness have further weaponized these creatures? Normally, when the Witness and its disciples hold creatures in stasis, it's trying to transplant them with hive worms in order to gain their subjugation. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case with all of these creatures. And who knows what's really going on? Was there some reason why they ended up in the Pale Heart? Or were the Ahamkara in the Pale Heart from the start of it all? There are so many questions that this image raises, but I am fairly certain this is an Ahamkara based on the body structure alone.
Because the Traveler's where I am, isn't it?
So, I really quickly wanted to point this out. We get a good look at a subjugator here, but also 2 Hive tomb ships behind it, that it is seemingly not aggressive towards and is just chilling with. Maybe they're dropping reinforcements for it. Here's the thing. That will be relevant in a moment. We'll come back to it in a bit. The landscape here is pretty stunning because, well, there's lava, but I figured it was worth pointing out that these are Ahamkara tentacles. It begs further questions about whether that was because of what we have seen, or whether the witness found some here, or whether the witness has encountered the Ahamkara before. Regardless, it looks like this is one of the corrupted sections of the Traveler based on the, well, image of a person struggling within the lava. So, yeah, that raises even more questions. The symbol highlighted on the circle here is as old as Destiny 1's iconography can get, but to be honest, outside of it being drawn in cutscenes and then having the Traveler itself traced over it, I don't really know what it means. It might just simply be a representation of the Traveler. Who knows?
He knows it won't stop after it's consumed this place.
Ah, yes. So here's a funny story. I was completely unaware that this was going on. I was doing some other work, and then I decided to solo Flawless, the dungeon, Warlord's Ruin, and, well, midway through my attempt, I looked over at Twitter and saw this frame, which a bunch of people in quick succession had tweeted at me because, well, I have kind of a thing about Kelgarath being a little... Anyway, the question is this just a generic homie, or is this Kelgarath? Either way, I'm gonna make sure their fate is still that they get picked up and placed headfirst in the nearest bin for recycling. Remember, dispose of your trash responsibly, kids.
You, me, the entirety of everything and everyone we know.
So, this is actually probably the most important series of frames in the entire trailer. Here we get a glimpse at Savathûn, Mithrax, and Keitel all in quick succession, implying that they're all going to be joining us inside the Pale Heart. In fact, if you look behind Savathûn, you can see some Annihilator totems being activated in the air, which we do also see earlier on in the trailer, which implies that the Lucent Hive are here. That's not nothing, and we'll talk about that for a little bit. But first, also do note that the Vanguard and Crow are also here in a frame that's displayed shortly after. So, there's a really simple question then. Do all of these characters make it into the Pale Heart, or are they apparitions conjured by our presence in the Traveler and our memory which may be shaping the Traveler? We know that Crow must be real because, I mean, he jumped through. We also know, probably from all the trailer footage we've seen, that Zavala and Ikora are real. However, Keitel, Mithrax, Savathûn, they're all open questions. I think Savathûn is the key here though, because if you look back into previous trailers, in particular the trailer that was showing off the gameplay from Final Shape that released a couple of weeks ago, you will actually see that in the early parts of the trailer there are Hive running through one of the trip mines that's been altered by Prismatic that a hunter throws out. And those Hive? Yeah, they're Lucent Hive. So it's entirely possible that the Lucent Brood has infiltrated the Pale Heart. And that's really quite something. It's worth remembering too that it might make a reasonable degree of sense that Savathûn infiltrated here successfully. Remember the 15th wish, the entire reason we're able to get inside the Pale Heart? Well, Riven told us a whole bunch about that wish, but she may not have told us everything. And remember who originally made the 15th wish? Yeah. It was Savathûn. So, ultimately, there may have been other parameters that Riven transcribed into the wish and that Savathûn desired that would allow her to also enter the Pale Heart along with her brood. Even if this is not her directly, I believe that there is a further chance for Savathûn to have pressed her influence here thanks to the 15th wish. It's a really interesting set of possibilities, but I think it is also worth remembering that Savathûn might not be willing to enter the Pale Heart of the Traveler herself. This means that the Savathûn we're seeing here might actually just be one of her echoes, or one of the visions and vestiges that we get within Savathûn's throne world. So don't necessarily count this as being the real Savathûn. As for Mithrax and Keitel though, yeah, I would say that they're probably real. They don't have access to the same kind of paracausal powers that we do or that the Witch Queen does, so their presence implies that they are here for real. Which is neat. Having allies inside the Pale Heart is certainly going to be quite something. I would also remind you of the 2 tomb ships that I pointed out earlier. There is a question looming, which is that if this subjugator wasn't attacking these ships, does that mean that there are Hive within the Pale Heart who are not on Savathun's side? If that is the case, this is likely the brood of Xivu Arath, and if Xivu is here, in the Traveler, we are about to see one hell of a showdown. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Xivu is still weak. But I don't think she would say no at the chance to strike. So I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Either way, the prospect of a showdown between the 2 siblings of the Osmium dynasty is quite something, especially if it leads us to blows to the point where we will be watching Savathun and Xivu Arath trade off verbally and try to convince each other of their own rightness. Xivu might come out as a surprising casualty of all this, or there might simply be a series of skirmishes, or we could see some kind of culmination where the 2 find common ground. That's all speculative, though.
It wants to infect it all. We gotta stop what's happening here. Now.
Needless to say, this is not the first time we've seen one of these, but this is the first really clear look we get at a veiled statue within the Pale Heart trailers that isn't just a momentary flash of footage. I can't confirm it, but I will say it's odd that this one is one of the only statues we've seen that isn't sliced and separated into parts. It's whole and complete. I don't know if anyone has seen any statues that have been sliced in any manner like this that are of that veiled statue variety, but if they have, maybe that puts some credence behind the idea that this is something that isn't that special. But I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. This is the one statue that consistently throughout pyramid architecture doesn't get meddled with. It's only meddled with in a single place, and that's the trailer where Asa talks about the precursors and the final shape. So, worth pointing out and worth thinking about at very least.
A final shape.
And in the last seconds of the trailer, we have that look at the witness, which shows us again some of the anger that it is capable of, and that despite its godlike power, it still has limits to its patience and can grow frustrated. Its composure can be marked. So, with all that said, that is the end of the trailer, but there are some big questions that arise for me having watched it. They are as follows. What is Savathun's goal inside the Traveler's Pale Heart if she is actually there, and if that is actually her brood, as opposed to some apparition formed from our mind? Secondly, how did an Ahamkara end up inside this glass casing? Something that was brought here by us? Something that was brought here by the witness? Something that was found within naturally? Something else? Don't know the answer to that either. And lastly, what is the meaning behind the veiled statues? Why are these ones left whole while all other masonry from the witness's creations appears to be segmented and sliced? I don't know the answers to any of these questions, but I think they're worth keeping in mind for the future as we venture into the Pale Heart. With all that said though, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like, and of course leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section, especially if you think you have answers to any of those questions that I posed. With all that being said though, know that your viewership as always is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime my name is Bife,